You should watch this video after you've seen an intro to game-based programming with ActionScript 3.0, which is also on the YouTube channel. Both of these have been created using the book Beginning Flash Game Programming for Dummies, written by Andy Harris. The difference is the book was written in ActionScript 2.0 for Flash MX 2004, and what I'm using is I'm going to be changing the codes to ActionScript 3.0 and using it with Adobe Flash Creative Suites 5.5. So the first thing we have is we want to create a paddle. So our paddle, all we have here is we have a little movie clip that I created, right? So I used my rectangle tool and I created a little rectangle, and then I gave it this this nice green fill color. Oops. And filled it in, and then I tweaked it a little bit with my selection tool to pull out the shape. Right, you can do this. You can tweak it like this. You can do all kinds of things, and then I converted it to a convert to symbol. All right, these are all things that I've done in previous videos. So if you haven't watched any of my other videos, you should probably go through and do that. All right, and I can call it anything I want and export to ActionScript just as a simple rule. So I'll delete this, get rid of it. I don't care about it, and show you that the finished product is a movie clip that I called Paddle Player, and I gave it the instant name of Paddle, P-A-D-D-L-E. So here's a simple movie clip that I gave an instance name as Paddle, and then I have some simple codes in here. We'll open up our ActionScript, and what we have is we have an event listener, right? And the player paddle function was created, and what we're going to do is we're going to have our paddle y equal to the y of my little mouse guy here. So let's do control test movie. This is something that we created a custom cursor star in the last video. So you can see that here's my mouse pointer, and wherever it is on the y-axis, that's vertical up and down, wherever it is, the registration point, which is the center point on my movie clip, is in that same y position, up and down. Right? So something we can do if we're playing Pong, we don't necessarily want to see the mouse. It might distract us. So we can do this mouse hide. So I had it commented out, but mouse dot hide. And when we do the mouse hide, we'll control test movie. You'll see just like we had with the custom cursor. So now here's my mouse over here, and when it goes onto the stage, it disappears. It's being hidden. But I'm moving the paddle, my player paddle, using the mouse Y location. So even though I don't see this mouse, it's the Y position or the vertical position equals wherever it is on your stage. Okay, so that was the first part. So I wrote this little code here, just like it was described in Chapter 7 of Andy Harris's Beginning Flash Game Programming for Dummies. And if you saw the last one, Intro to Game Programming, you saw that I had this custom cursor that follows the mouse around, but that was with the X and Y positions. And what I'm doing here is I'm simply placing this for the Y position. All right, so let's close this up. And there's the registration point that I'm talking about. So that's where the Y position is going to equal my mouse position right there. And I could move this anywhere if I wanted it all the way backed up on the stage like that. I can put it anywhere I want. So that actually could be a good spot to put it if you wanted to. But I like to leave a little play in there. So you could even put it, you can have two levels, 2 players, double stack them side by side, just the same. So now let's look at our next one. So the next one, I still have my my paddle, and for this one I simply named it's instant name player instead of paddle. You could name it whatever you want. So the codes were rewritten for the instant name to be player instead of paddle. And this I named game ball. So lowercase GAME, capital BALL, game ball. And that's a movie clip also. You make it the same way. I just made, instead of using the rectangle, all right, I created an oval tool and I put it in here. But something I decided to do uh, for this movie clip was, if you are familiar with animation or creating a movie clip, if we go into the movie clip, you'll see that I changed the color of the ball in different frames, and I've done this in previous animations too. So I just simply right click, insert keyframe, right click, insert keyframe, and then over here right insert frame, regular frame, and then for each one of them I just grabbed my fill tool, picked a new color, and changed the color of the ball for each of those, so that when I go back to my scene, when I go back to my scene 1 over here, you can see that you have the first frame of the movie clip in here. But when I hit Control Test Movie, it's going to blink. It's going to loop through those 4 frames. So this is game ball. This is player. Those are the 2 movie clips I have here. And for my ActionScript, so I have my mouse hide, and then the game ball, I gave it a speed, displacement X and a displacement Y, dx dy. So I have my game ball movie dot dx dy equals 5. So that's how much displacement it's going to have on the X and Y position. And if you watch the previous video, you'll see this moves it down and to the right, because down is positive and to the right is positive. So this will initialize the ball down and to the right. And then we have our paddle ball. All right, so we have functions. We have our player paddle, our ball move, our check boundaries, and our check paddles. All right, so this is very similar to the codes that I had for the bounce. All right, so what I have here is I have this code here. When it bounces against the stage width, all right, then it'll turn around and come back. So the gameball.dx, which is 5, will become -5. It hits it again from -5, it becomes +5. But it constantly, the negatives constantly added every time it gets to, if our game ball movie clip dot x position is greater than the stage width and minus the width of the game ball, or half the width of the game ball, then I'll turn around. And this had greater clarification when we created it in the last video, which was Introduction to Game-Based Programming, using the same code in here. But what we're doing here, that's in addition to what we did before, is we also want it to bounce off the paddle. All right, so when it bounces off the paddle, all right, so we have our game ball and it hits our player, which is the movie clip that is our paddle. All right, we have a hit test for that object, player. And if it equals true that they hit each other, then our game ball becomes negative, so it turns around and bounces back. All right, so we have our player paddle function, which is the player Y equals the mouse Y, so we move it in the last one. And then we have our ball move, which means that our ball X position is going to equal our dx dy. So dx X position is +5 for each one of displacement, and we have a Y displacement of +5. We can set it, you want to do it faster, you can set it to 10, or 15, or 20, or 30, or you can make it slower if you do it to 1, or 2, or 3. And then we have the last thing we have is that it bounces off. So when it hits our object, which is the player, then the ball changes its displacement from positive to negative, or negative to positive, depending on that. So let's go ahead and we'll Control, Test Movie, and Flash. And what we see happening here is our ball came down at that angle, and it's bouncing off our height and our width, and it bounces off our paddle too. All right, so the way I set this up was just like we did in our last movie. I put the ball wrap position for this all the way over when x is less than 0. but we bounce everywhere else. And what I have happening here is our ball bounces off the player's paddle when we do that. You can also see that the ball's changing its colors as it goes through those movie clips. You can do all kinds of things to make it a little bit more graphically interesting. All right, so that is the second stage. All right, so now we have our paddle bounce, and what we have taking place here is we're adding a code here to bounce off the angle. Right, so if I this is modifying the way it bounces off our 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 paddle. So I'll test the movie and we'll see if we can see what the difference is. So now before we had this angle of incidence equals angles of reflection, but now I can change it. So you see I can go straight when it comes in there. If I have it on the very tip here, then you'll see that it has a great angle coming off the side. Right, so that's different than when we go back to just the paddle ball. I didn't have a code for there in there. So when we did this, what happened was every time the ball came off and bounced off our paddle, it was like it was just bouncing off the wall, where it was just simply, see, I can't get it to straight. It just bounces off at the angle it comes in. It comes in at an angle and it goes out at an equal angle. That's actually called the law of reflection. So that the angle that the ball comes into this paddle at is the angle that it bounces off of it. So you always get the same bounce, just like it's bouncing on the boundary walls. And I can't control how it bounces off my paddle. It just simply obeys the law of reflection. Now, that's why I put this curve in here, because obviously I was a physics teacher, and I wanted to create a game that obeys the laws of physics. So I put a curvature on here so that when it comes in the center, right, I can try and get it to get straight off the angle. And then if I get it at the sides where there's a great curve on it, then we'll have a angle that is different or greater than when it came in and hit it. Or we can simply straighten it out when we go through there, different things. All right, so let's take a look at what this code is here that I changed. So all of this is the same. We have our dx dy, we have our paddle ball with the check boundaries, player y, check boundaries function. But what I did here was in our check paddles, right? So this is where we had our hit test. I put that the x will stay the same, right? So the speed, our horizontal speed coming in will just be reversed to the horizontal speed going out. But our y speed, our displacement y, is going to be greater or will be less depending on the angle that it hits the player y. So the difference between the registration y position of the game ball and the registration y position of the player panel. Right, so that's the calculate ball angle function that is going to be run when the hit test, when it bounces, and player y number and the game ball y number. All right, these are number variables, and our y speed is equal to 5 times, right, our game ball y position minus the player y position, where those divided by 25, and then you return the y speed to be up here, right? Our calculated dy. All right, so this is what we are determining from this position. So that gives it the great angle that we did. So this is what was added to our last code clip of the game to increase the angle. All right, so now let's look at creating an opponent. All right, so now we have our player instant name for our player paddle. we have our game ball instant name, and up here we have opponent for a opponent's paddle, or the computer's paddle. It could be an opponent that you play against. You have two people play this game, or it could simply be the computer like I'm creating now. So let's look at the code here. We just have those 3 movie clips, and so we start the same. Oops. We start the same up here with our mouse hide. We have our game ball X and Y. We have our event listeners. So we have our player paddle, and then we have an opponent paddle function added to our list of functions that are going to play at the enter frame event. All right. So our player is simply to whatever the Y position of mouse is, the player position registration point will be at. So our opponent is going to equal the game ball's Y position. So our opponent Y position, or vertical position, is going to be whatever the game ball's Y position is. Maybe you see a fatal error in that, or something that you could create a game and then have other people tell them, you give them $1 if they can beat the opponent. So our ball move is the same, all right? Function is the same. Our check boundaries is the same, except it's all the same in there. Except I took out the bounce. So now what we have here is our X positions. What we have is a ball wrap for both sides. If we have the stage width, then it still bounces here. Oh, it still bounces off it there. I haven't changed it yet. This one for our X position gives the ball wrap to the stage width. All right, so check paddles. All right, so we have a hit test object for our player, and now we have a else if game ball hit test object opponent. All right, and then we have our function for our player when it bounces off, and we have a function for the angle off the opponent. So now we have a hit test for the check paddles for our player paddle, which is us, and the computer is the opponent. So when the game ball hits the opponent, the X position becomes negative, which means it turns around, reverses the direction it's going in, or displacement. And our game ball dy is the ball angle function of our opponent.y, game ball.y. And those are 2 movie clips. So then we have the same exact code for the opponent ball angle that we had for the player ball angle, so that when it bounces off the paddle, it will bounce off at an angle instead of just obeying the law of reflection. So let's go ahead and control, test movie, flash player. All right, so now this is what I'm talking about. No matter how hard I try to beat this, you can see that the opponent over here, this registration point in the middle, always equals the ball. So there's no possible way from this code that I can ever win this game, because no matter how tricky I am, the faster the ball moves, the faster the opponent moves. And you'll see it always feeds it back slow because it's always at the center point. So you can never beat this computer, because he's always going to be equal to wherever the ball is, and the ball will always bounce off the computer's paddle. So we have to do something here to make it a little bit more challenging. And what we do is we have artificial stupidity, is what it's being called, where we have to. All right, so I changed the speed of the ball to make it a little bit faster here. And then we have the game ball is a dx of 15, and the opponent's, we give it a speed now that it has a speed of 6. All right, so it has a speed of 6 taking place. And then under the opponents, I also have that our game ball y, if it's less than the opponent y, then the opponent changes its position from up to down. Right, so or else the opponent dy equals opponent speed. So we have here some code that will slow the paddle down, and then make it check its vertical positions to change the vertical positions if if it's higher than or lower than the game ball's position. So that's all that was changed in there. We test the movie now in Flash, and now you'll see that I made the ball go faster, obviously, and you'll see that how this opponent over here is checking the position of the ball, and then it's reacting to what happens. And you'll see up here, I also put in a code that I didn't show you yet to make to trace out if somebody scores. And I know it looks still difficult, but I can score on this guy. There we go. If I do it just right, there we go. You'll see player scores. Good. So let's get rid of that. So there was more code here. So let's see. All right. So in our check boundaries, all right, we have a position that our game ball will, if it becomes greater than the stage width, all right, that means that you scored. So you trace player score. So when the ball was all the way over to the right side and went off the stage width, you score. And then the game ball position X equals the player's X position plus 50. That means that it's right in front of it reappears right at the front of your paddle at the same exact center registration point. And the Y position equals the Y position, which is your registration. All right, and the game ball dy equals 0, which means it comes off what it was originally. We also have if it's less than 0, which is a starting point of the stage, the top left corner, then you trace opponent scores, and then the game ball position is on the opponent's paddle, minus 50, which means in front of the opponent's paddle. And Y position equals the registration point, Y position, and the dy equals 0. All right, so that's what happens there. So control test movie. So you'll see here's when it appears and comes right off the player's paddle. You could adjust that to a smaller number. If I could score, which isn't as easy as it sounds against this guy. All right, so you want a game to be challenging. When you first create it, you can play with the numbers so that it's easier to score on the opponent. All right, and then you can see that when I score on him, it appears just before my paddle and comes shooting out of my paddle. All right, so we pretty much have a game there, but remember this trace output doesn't really show you what you want to see there. Let's see. Okay, so now that we have this in here, artificial stupidity, the next thing we want to do is we want to add our score cards. Right? So now I have a dynamic text box. All right, so it's a dynamic text box, and I named this dynamic text box player, capital S, score, capital BOX, box. Right, and of course I use device fonts, make sure that's on, and then I pick something like Arial or Times New Roman, and I bend that font. Hit OK. So then I also do the same thing. This is opponent score box, is the dynamic text box name, and I use device fonts, and I make sure that everything's embedded. I'm using the show border around text so that this sits up there. You don't have to. Right? I can get rid of that if I wanted to, so that it doesn't have this border around it like you see there. But I have it on there just for now, just as something new. This is still the same. This is game ball This is named opponent. This is still named player. And let's window actions. And what we see here is we have our start, our variable for player score, our number equals 0, right? And our variable for opponent score is a number variable, and that also is 0. So we have that over here. We see that. I mean, I put that in there, but it'll start at 0, 0. And then we have our enter frame functions that take place. All right, everything in here is the same. But as you may know from when we had our trace player score, now we have our player score becomes added plus plus, and our opponent score becomes added plus plus. Remember, these are our variables. Player score is a variable, and opponent score is a variable that we create at the beginning of this. All right, and then we have if the ball becomes greater than the stage width, then our variable adds 1 plus 1. Plus plus means plus 1. And if it becomes less than the horizontal of 0, then our opponent score becomes plus 1. Plus plus means plus 1. All right. And then we have our update our text fields. So we have the two text fields that we created there. Update our text fields. So every time there's a score that takes place, that the ball goes all the way to the stage right or all the way to the stage left, then the text fields are updated, and whatever happened there, if that happened, then it updates and you got 1 point. If it happens, it updates and the opponent got 1 point. All right, so that, check boundaries, we have everything else the same. And then we have our update text field, right? So our player score box is our text field equals the string, right? Equals a string because the player score is a number. So this, by claiming it to be a string, means that it'll play the number, it'll put the number in as a string, and it'll show it as that. So then we have also our opponent score box text string. The opponent score is a number variable. This is a number variable. This is a number variable, and we'll display it as a string when it comes out. So let's control test movie in Flash. And so I got to try and score on this. Now I put those text boxes with the boundaries across it, so you can see right here I got a 1, and now they have a 1. All right, so you can see that gets updated, and then it also gets put out in our output text box. All right, so right there is pretty much the Pong game, but the last thing I'm going to do is what we see is I'm going to create a different. I'm going to close this right now. We have a beginning frame, which is Pong, and then I created a button. I just took it out of the Windows Common Libraries buttons, and I just found that classic buttons. The the classic buttons, arcade buttons, are in here. So for some reason it won't open for me. There it goes. So you got blue, green, and I just pulled one onto the stage, and then I gave it a name, lowercase btn, capital PLAY, and then this is just static text. Right? This is static text, and this is static text, and then I have a winning. So if you win, then you go to awesome, you win, and then this is the same button, actually the same frame, just copy and paste it, button play. And then this is sorry you lose. So if you lose, you go to this frame. And remember, I named the frames over here. So I click on the frame I want, and I name them WIN, PLAY. So I also have a video that's creating interactive buttons with Adobe CS 5.5, and this is how how we do this. So I use the same codes that I had before. So let's do Windows ActionScripts. And you'll see for frame 1, all right, I put this little code, all right, stopped it because the timeline wants to play through the loops over and over again unless you put this little stop action in there. And then I have my button play, which is that big red button there, is a event listener, and I put the mouse event, which is a click, and I have a function called play Pong. So the function play Pong event, mouse event, and I go to and stop at the frame labeled with the label name play. So if I click over here, then I have the label name play, and I'll get back to that code in a second. This is the same thing. This is frame 20, doesn't have to be, and I still have this button play, add event, mouse, and I have play Pong win function. So the play Pong win function is go to and stop at play. So that's the one that's has the label name play. This one has the label win. And then obviously this is the same, almost exact same, except this is my play Pong lose function. So if I press the button play. Also, something else I didn't mention was I have to put a code of show the mouse, because we hid the mouse on frame 10 when we played Pong. And if we don't show the mouse, it'll stay hidden until we put in a code that says show the mouse again. So once we're done playing and we win or lose, then what's going to happen is we want to see the mouse again so we can hit the button and we don't know exactly where a mouse is. So this is our function play Pong lose function. That's just what I named it. It's a mouse event. We go to and stop at play. And so now let's go to our game. So here's all our code in frame 10, all right, which I labeled the name play. And we have our mouse.hide game ball.txt. Now this import flash events, whenever you have create events, event handlers, event listeners in CS 5.5, it'll automatically put this code in here, and you just leave it there so that your flash games, if you put them on the web, function correctly for everyone who wants to play them, so that the codes know that how to have the event listeners read correctly by your computer codes. So we have our mouse hide, right, which hid the mouse. We have our variables created. We have our functions that are when it enters the frame, an event will take place that plays all of these functions or runs all those functions. The first one is that our player Y equals the mouse Y. Our second one is that the opponent paddle follows the ball around but at a slower speed than the ball moves. We also have a function where the ball actually begins to move, and then we have over here that if our player score, which is our variable, is greater or equals 3, so equals 3, then you go to and stop at the win frame. All right. If our opponent's score is greater than or equals 3, then you go to the lose. So whoever scores 3 first is the winner of this game, and that's the only thing that's changed. Okay, that's in here. Right? Everything else is the same from the original ones, but we just added these two go to and stop frame events, where we go to the win frame or we go to the lose frame. Right? So control and test movie and flash. All right, so we come in and we push our button, and there's a game. All right, so I'll just let them score for the first. Opponent scores. There's 3. Oh, sorry, you lose. Push the button, and we can play again. And then we can see, all right, if I can get 3 points before he gets 3 points. And what happened here was sometimes there's some little glitches in the system. All right, so you can fix that. Now it has to go all the way off the stage, so that becomes difficult. All right, so awesome, you win. So I scored 3 points and went to that. So obviously you can change this score right here. You can have he has to score 50 points to win, and you could score 1. You can make it as difficult as you want or as easy you want by changing the ball speeds. So that's it. Right there, we just created Pong using ActionScript 3.0 as was described in Andy Harris's book, which is Beginning Flash Game Programming for Dummies. I recommend that you get the book, and he adds a lot more specifics into it. But the nice thing about this is you can write it in ActionScript 2.0, or you could use the codes that I gave you to write it in ActionScript 3.0.